The clouds are veiling the mountain behind me right now, and I actually think it's quite a beautiful, poetic representation by way of weather in regard to how some of the ways that we think about things and the things that we focus on create these veils that actually get in the way of us seeing our path. And it's also poetic because the opening card that we have for today is the moon, which is showing a path up the mountain. Now, we're entering some interesting times over the next couple of weeks, which is an opportunity through a new beginning that will allow us to work through some kind of wound that we've carried with us in our lives. And before I jump into the cards, I just want to reference real quick the astrological energies that are coming in by way of the cards, and also make a point to note that we have a new moon today, which is in Gemini, and there are a lot of astrological aspects happening to the moon's placement over the next couple of weeks. And we have the moon kind of standing first and at the forefront of our reading today. Literally, the opening card that we have is the moon. Now, the other signs that are being referenced, because the moon is in Gemini, so there's some kind of new beginning through communication or some way that we're seeing things or some exchange, because Gemini as a sign governs communication. It's ruled by Mercury and how we work with things in our mind. It's also a mutable energy. So that's where, you know, there's a neutral energy between, you know, the active and passive energies, or the cardinal and fixed energies. There's this third point which allows for some neutrality. So there's some flexibility in this space, and we're entering a new moon phase today and tomorrow, depending on what placement you have, of course, on our planet. But that's an energy that's coming in our reading today, as well as the sign of Leo, which currently has Mars and Venus in it, which are sextiling the moon right now. We also have the energy of Pisces, which currently has Saturn in it, which it just went retrograde today. It also has Neptune in it, which is in a relationship with it's actually in a, oh man, it has a relationship with the moon and with Uranus right now. Then we also have Aries, the sign of Aries in our reading today, which is kind of mentioning the Chiron energy, which is where Chiron is placed currently in Aries, which is why I say we're entering into this place and opportunity to work with some kind of wound or some kind of area of our lives that we need to bring some kind of healing to, because Chiron is the wounded healer. So wherever you have Aries in your chart, that is where ultimately these energies are going to be influencing, because Chiron is a big player in our world. It's the kind of center point in between Saturn and Uranus. So it's where we find the line between change and responsibility and that dance between them. And right now we have Saturn, which is in Pisces, bringing this sense of responsibility to that area of Pisces in our chart, and it's going retrograde. So we're in this place of review, and we're seeing hang-ups, we're seeing glitches, we're getting challenged, and those challenges are really meant to bring a new understanding to this area of healing that we are working with. We also have the energy of Capricorn on the table, which is kind of bringing our attention to Pisces, which is retrograde currently at 29 degrees of Capricorn. And so we have some interesting aspects on the table. Now, when we look at just today in general being June 17th, as I mentioned, the moon is sextile Mars, which is in Leo. The moon is also sextile Chiron, which is in Aries. The moon is the fastest moving celestial body, right? Then we have Mercury, which is sextile Venus in Leo. And as I said, Saturn just went retrograde. The moon will be conjunct the sun, which is where we see the new moon. And then the moon is going to be square Neptune, which is over in Pisces. So we have some strong energies right now, astrologically, which are literally being mentioned in our reading today. So what's the reading all about? The energy of the moon being our opening card is pointing to the space of where we've kind of gotten off of our path. You know, like we can't see the mountain, much like literally you can't see the mountain that's behind me right now. Something has been veiled and it's been putting our attention at something right here, which has really kind of distracted us from where we have felt the call to go. And so this is a reminder to put ourselves back on track. Now, when we consider that there is a new moon today, you know, and also, again, I just want to point out that Capricorn on the table is bringing light to that full moon energy that we'll be experiencing in a couple of weeks. So I really feel like the energy that we're working with that's in the reading today is something that is going to be playing out over the next 2-week time period as the moon literally waxes or gains in light toward the full moon stage, because we'll be able to see things in reflection and things will be coming to the surface, which right now we're not really seeing because the way that we're looking at things is a little blindsided, right? When the moon and the sun are really close together in a new moon, there's a time of darkness. So when you go out at night, you won't be able to see your landscape. You won't be able to see, you know, the area and arena around you. But when the moon moves to its full placement, which is at 180-degree relationship to the sun, you can see everything at night. Everything that's in the dark comes to light. You can actually find your way through darkness just from the light of the moon when there's a full moon outside. So there's this process that we're going through right now, which we feel like we're in the dark of something, that is going to be more light will be brought to it over the next couple of weeks. The challenge that we have that came in today is the 10 of Cups. Now, the 10 of Cups is an emotional happily ever after card. And so there is this challenge in how we're looking at things, and possibly through some kind of relationship or some view of how relationships should be. The way that we're going to get through the challenge came in by way of the King of Wands. Now, this is leading from your heart and leading by example. What's so interesting about this particular card coming in on the table today is that we have both Venus and Mars in the sign of Leo, and they're just a couple of degrees apart. So we have this stirring of, you know, the energy of Mars, which is like the aggressive energy, and the energy of Venus, which is like the nurturer, and they're in close proximity, and they're in this space of Leo, which is not only, you know, our creativity and our heart aspect, but it's the sun behind the sun, and there is some kind of ego aspect to this that is being worked out, particularly when you consider that the Mars energy, which is in a relationship right now with Mercury, and then Venus, which is in a relationship with the moon, there's this interesting aspect by way of sextile that is providing an energy that we can take advantage of if we examine things with the heart. And the heart has a very interesting landscape, right? Like there are trenches of sorrow in the heart. There are mountains of triumph in the heart. There's a lot of terrain in the heart that gives us perspective. And so that's the way that we go through it, is we actually look at what it is that is nurturing our heart and allow that to guide us, rather than, you know, looking at what angers us and what frustrates us all the time. Because the currents that we have of the emotions and water energy and fire energy brings things to the surface that we have to look at and that we have to work with ultimately. Now, the ultimate outcome came in through the Page of Cups, which is, you know, having some kind of caution in going into a situation, reading the situation for what it is. If you are about to, you know, navigate over a body of water, what does the current look like? What is the landscape of the emotional terrain that you are having to figure out how to transverse? Is it a you know, stream that is pretty slow moving so you can just kind of walk across it, or is it a raging river? You have to be willing to read that situation and use caution in the situation that you're stepping into, and really listen to your emotional center and how it's guiding you. Now, what's interesting though is that we have this card followed by the Queen of Wands, which is referencing that Chiron energy, and also the energy of self-development, you know, the sense of like, how do we learn from situations and how does that develop who we are in the world? So there's something that we are learning how to work through, which is really guiding us into a new evolution of self. And then we have the Chariot, or the Charioteer, in the card that I drew, which is, you know, having some kind of self-control over your emotions, right? We see another reference to the moon here and Cancer energy, which is where the moon is getting ready to move into. And then of course we'll have a full moon when the moon moves into Capricorn, which is at 180 degrees of where the sun will be placed in a couple of weeks. So we have this energetic, which is really calling us out of what is familiar to us and calling us into a place of unknown. But in order to actually like move through that space, we have to have the ability to control these two beasts in front of us, right? And we can control them through our mind and our emotions so that we can continue to go on the path that we ultimately feel called to go on, and that's the best for our growth. We have to learn to be less of a victim and actually have more discipline and self-control in some kind of emotional situation. Now, that's further clarified by the Eight of Pentacles, which is reminding us that everything takes work and everything takes time, and there is this refining of our values and our skills as we transverse this situation, which is referenced through the element of time, or the variable, I should say, of time itself. And then that was finalized by the Queen of Pentacles, which is, again, you know, ties us back to the full moon, and also where, ironically, Pluto is in retrograde right now. So as the moon aspects that Pluto energy, there is another addition of transformative help that, you know, refines some aspect of our character in our life path, because that's what Capricorn ultimately governs in our lives. Now, how it all shows up for you is more personable depending on where these signs are in your natal chart. The natal chart has a house system, which basically has 12 little pieces of the pie, so to speak, and each of those little sections represents a different area of your chart that has a natural ruling planet and a natural ruling sign. But then, depending on the time that you were born, of course, you know, that dial, so to speak, or diagram moves depending on where the sun is at, and all of those planetary placements would be in other houses in your chart. So how the planets are influencing your chart through their movements right now, and how it's showing up for your life, is greatly going to be revealed if you have an understanding of your natal chart. So if you are interested in understanding that more, feel free to reach out to me at rootsofalchemy@gmail.com, or schedule some time with me on my website through my services and consulting section at rootsofalchemy.com. I send you all a lot of love and a good wish. I myself am going through it because the South Node is right on top of my natal sun, and Jupiter is right on top of my natal Chiron, and of course, the Venus aspect over in Leo is square my part of fortune and my Chiron. And I also have Uranus, which is in opposition to my natal Mercury, and all kinds of stuff going on right now. So just know you're not going through it alone. I send you all a good wish. I'll see you again soon. We'll get through the veil, because clouds always do part in time.